I'm Trevor Fishlock, and we are off on a quest along canals, lakes and rivers and estuaries that shaped our history, shaped us. So we're in our element, exploring British and Irish waterways. Ahead of us in this programme lie the drama and rugged beauty of the north of England. The names resonate: great cities, Manchester, Newcastle, York, and great rivers like the Tyne, and waterways created by men ambitious and visionary.
Accustomed today to busy networks of road and rail, we need to remember how the new canals revolutionised freight transport in Britain in the second half of the 18th century. Roads then were bad and expensive, canals efficient and affordable.
From the 1760s, a fever of canal building gripped the country. And here in the heart of Manchester, the canals, warehouses, a crisscross of bridges proclaim the volcanic birth of industrial power. The canal builders responded to an urgent demand for cheap transport, and the sums were simple. A horse could carry a load of 300 pounds on its back, but the same animal could tow 20 tons of freight packed into a canal barge.
By 1830, armies of labourers had woven a silvery water web across the country. 4,000 miles of canals linking factories to towns and manufacturers to their customers, opening trade everywhere.
Reaching across the landscape, the canals were arteries, energising and transforming trade and industry. And they made Manchester the powerful hub of the world's cotton business.
People nicknamed it Cottonopolis. It rose as the capital of the north. Here in Manchester is one end of the canal built by the ambitious Duke of Bridgewater and his engineer, James Brindley. Opened in 1761, it carried coal 10 miles from the Duke's collieries in Lancashire. Its tunnels were a wonder, and the canal an engineering triumph that earned big money for the young Duke. People liked the new canals, the water reflecting the houses, the barges and tow paths and bridges in picturesque combination. It seemed a gentle conquest of nature. Nevertheless, canals were making changes in the landscape. Industry was on the march, drawing people out of the fields and into the cotton mills, to a new world of work and wages.
The importance of canals to the cotton industry in Manchester is that the canals acted as the veins, the arteries to move the goods around the city. And without those, there couldn't have been the concentration of mills and warehouses that we get in early 19th century Manchester. They're absolutely vital to the way in which Manchester developed. You've got raw goods coming in on the canals, that's the raw cotton, and of course coal to power the boilers and the steam engines that run the machinery. And then you've got the finished goods, the Manchester goods, going out on the canals as well, and they're going off around the world, servicing the British Empire and of course the London market. There's something like 150,000 people living in Manchester by the 1820s. It's the fourth biggest city in Britain, so it's really densely occupied because all of that life is taking place within the inner ring road over a couple of square miles.
In 1876, Manchester awarded itself a symbol of its power, prosperity and Victorian respectability. a grand Gothic town hall. Mosaic worker bees salute the makers of wealth, and 12 great murals by Ford Madox Brown illustrate scenes from Manchester's history.
Manchester has two notable waterways. It's got the world's first industrial canal in the Bridgewater, and what's arguably the last industrial canal, which is the Manchester Ship Canal, built in the 1880s and 1890s. Now, the Ship Canal opened in 1894 and was a huge undertaking. It was seen by the city as a way of revitalising the economy, creating an inland port 36 miles from the Irish Sea, and capable of taking ships with more than 1,000 tonnes. So it's a real innovation in many ways, and it allows Manchester to maintain its position at the heart of the canal network well into the mid-20th century, into the 1930s. Well, in fact, Manchester docks were still very active down to the 50s and the 1960s.
As their skills and knowledge grew, canal engineers took on tougher challenges. They built spectacular long-distance routes across the Pennine Mountains that separate east from west in northern England. And they showed how barges could climb hills.
The Leeds and Liverpool Canal is a masterpiece of the great age of British canals. And this is its crown jewel, the 5-rise staircase of locks at Bingley. It opened for business in 1774.
Above the town and chimneys of Bingley, barges descend or climb 60 feet. The canal has many locks with 2 or 3 rises, but this is the only one with 5, and it's the steepest. As always with canals, there's no point in rushing. You take it easy, teamwork and a light touch on the tiller. Opening the gates requires a bit of muscle and a lot of patience.
I remember the first time we approached the 5-rise from the bottom. We moored up and I took one look at it and thought, oh my God.
It must have looked like Everest.
Oh, it did. Yeah, very daunting. Yeah. But I've done it a few times now and it's just second nature really now.
When we go through, the front gate becomes the back gate.
That's correct, yeah. When you're in a staircase lock, yes, that's true. There are five locks altogether in this particular staircase lock, yeah.
Do you think you've got the easier job?
Oh, absolutely.
What's Dave doing?
Well, Dave has to open the grout paddles, which is quite hard for a lady to do sometimes. They can be very, very stiff to move around. But you do see an awful lot of the women doing that job rather than the driving.
Better than going to a gym.
It is. You don't need to go to a gym when you do lock work.
How long has the boat been your home?
Oh, about 3.5 years now.
And is it as romantic as it looks?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. We've been known to sit in bed on a morning, weekends, you know, with a cup of tea, with the front doors open, looking at the view and enjoying the weather. And we've actually had a kingfisher perch on the rope on the front there, which was absolutely fabulous. Yeah, I mean, you don't see them very often, you know, but to have it perch on the front of the boat, oh, it was unbelievable.
Oh, nearly there now. One more, isn't it?
Yeah, that's it. We're in the last lock.
Yeah.
Just to go down, and then we're on the stretch of canal again.
Yeah. Certainly get a great feeling of the height now, don't you? You're this far down.
You do. I think, yeah, when you look back, you know, you think, oh gosh, what a feat of engineering.
Yeah.
You know, when you think it was built in 1700 and something, you know, it's absolutely amazing.
Further along the Leeds and Liverpool Canal, we enter the Foulridge Tunnel. It's almost a mile long, and we admire those intrepid labourers who took 5 years to dig it with picks and shovels in the 1790s. No room for a towpath, so the barge horses strolled over the hill in the sunshine, while men lay on their backs in the dark and propelled the barges with their legs. It's cold and shivery with icy drips, and it's a long way to go to see the light at the end of the tunnel.
A famous story tells of a cow called Buttercup, who in 1912 fell into this canal and swam all the way through this tunnel to the other end, where customers at a local pub rescued and revived her. And I like to think that a glass of whiskey put back the spring in her step.
We switch to the Grand Union Canal, London to the Midlands, opened in 1814. The village of Stoke Bruin houses the National Waterways Museum, and Brian Collins tells us more.
The village is more or less on the side of a hill, with the church up on the top. And when the canal came through, it went straight through the rector's fish ponds. It chopped the village in half, and his fish ponds, and he wasn't very happy about that. And unusually for a canal village, all the buildings face onto the canal. And if we look around us, when we're walking around, people like to come and see the pub, old-fashioned thatched building, the lockkeepers' houses. The museum, of course, which was an old corn mill, driven by a steam engine. It had a big tall chimney. So it chopped the village in half, and this is probably part of the charm of it. People like to come and walk and see just how this ribbon of water came through a village. It's all very pretty now, but of course it was much more a harsh way of life to the working boat people.
During the Second World War, women volunteers took over some of the essential work of running freight barges on the canals. And this plaque honours their skill and service. They were hard-working, but jokingly known as idle women.
Not a term that doesn't seem quite right somehow, because they were far from idle. It came from the name, of course, Inland Waterways, IW. And transport, of course, was absolutely essential during the war, when the canal was pressed into service. And some women from off the bank were recruited, and these were the ones that became known as the idler women. But they came to work on the canals, which must have been quite a strain for them, because they had to get used to the actual lifestyle of the canals to start with, and the community that they were working with. And of course, boats isn't just steering a boat along in the sunshine. All the shoveling and sweeping and all this sort of thing. They had to get used to all those rigours. But these people played a significant role in transporting goods along this main arterial canal.
In the heyday of the canals, boatmen covered the distance from London to Birmingham in 5 days. That was 137 miles through 166 locks. One of the vital links along the way was this, the Blisworth Tunnel, 1.5 miles long and quite a sweat.
And years ago, people used to hang about at the end of the tunnel to earn themselves a couple of bob legging boats through the tunnel because there wasn't a towpath for the horses to pull them. And because this caused a bit of acrimony between people, to say the least, the Grand Junction employed their own leggers, and they would leg the boats through the tunnel, lying on narrow boards, hanging out over the water in the pitch dark and the wet, walking on the sides of the tunnel. Very dangerous, not very pleasant at all. Of course, it was almost even more dangerous when you met a boat coming the other way, because you had to get off your planks, pull them in, get the boats past each other, put your wingboards, your planks out, and get back onto them and start legging again. So it was a pretty hairy experience, I should think. I wouldn't want to do it myself.
On the Grand Union Canal in Warwickshire, the Hatton Locks. A challenge for all waterway travellers. You have to wind yourself up for it. 21 locks in 2 miles. It's known as the Stairway to Heaven. These days, canals enjoy their second heyday. Narrowboats increasingly popular as families and friends stretch out time in the slow lane and unwind. It's a renaissance. In the past few years, many canals, once derelict, have been restored. The pioneers who built them 2 centuries ago for the cargoes of the industrial dawn would be amazed to see them today, recycled for fun and ambling relaxation.
Now we say a reluctant goodbye to canals and all their stories and history, and follow the paths of poets and painters to the inspirational waters of the Lake District.
If you go back around 15,000 years ago, this would be a glacier, this would be all ice, and since then the glacier's gone, and now we've got a valley which is subsequently filled with water, and we've got the lakes, and that's how the Lake District gets its name. Washwater itself is probably one of the clearest lakes in England. It's also one of the deepest lakes in England. But also we've got we've got to monitor the systems that work around the lake itself, the farms, pollution from the farms or any other source. We spend a lot of money on treatment controls and things like that to make sure the lake's kept in a good state of good condition. The Quiet Lakes policy, it covers the Western Valleys. It's both a national trust and a national park incentive. It was a number of years ago to keep the lakes quiet. They're not promoted as much as the other lakes. If you go to Central Lakes, Windermere, Coniston, you get a lot of boating, canoeing going on, windsurfing. Whereas Washwater itself, we do allow rowing boats on small craft, but we don't allow any power boats or sailcraft on it. I think it's just the fact that you've got a view like this, which, it's a unique view. Obviously we're winning the best view in Britain. People do think of it as a quiet place to be, and it's one of the very few places in the country you can come to now and enjoy this sort of scenery without all the commercialisation of it as well. I think Wasdale itself, it's dramatic at the best of times, but there's never 2 days the same. Some days you can come in, it looks like it has a ceiling on it. You've got low cloud and it looks black. The lake looks dark. And if you get it on a clear day, when you get the mirror image in the lake, you know, you can get perfectly mirror image all the mountains. You can even see the sheep reflected in the lake when they're on the top of the mountains. So it's a very dramatic place to be. When you live here, you take it for granted. I mean, I've lived in the lakes all my life, and it wasn't until I moved away that you sort of realised how important it was. You know, you wanted to come back to it. And we're meeting people who come to the lakes, you know, you realise how special it is to them as well. So it gives you some idea why National Trust looks after it in the way it does, because it is a unique place, and it is, you know, it will be for our children, our children's children, if we do keep it, you know, as it is.
Some say the lakes are best walked slowly, a small piece at a time. Take a tip from William Wordsworth and dream your time away. Or board the boat and slip as gently as a ripple into a living watercolour. On the Ullswater steamers, all you have to do is sit and stare.
Well, Ullswater Steamers began as the Ullswater Steam Navigation Company in 1859. They had a little paddle steamer on here called the Enterprise, which doesn't exist anymore. Whether she was scuttled or broken up for scrap, we don't know. But basically there was a community down here. There was a thriving lead mine and no way of serving the community because there wasn't a proper road down the lakeshore. There were difficulties with the terrain. In 1877 they built Lady of the Lake, a larger vessel to replace the Enterprise, and we think the Enterprise demised sometime after Lady of the Lake was built. There was record of somebody galloping down the lakeshore on horseback to ask Lady of the Lake to go to the Enterprise's rescue. They'd been making hay in the fields and hay bales had got into the lake and they'd clogged up the paddles apparently. But Lady of the Lake plied Ullswater, supplying provisions, pit props, pitch pine for the mines and all sorts of things, coal. They carried beasts, they carried the hunting pack, carried all sorts of things over the years.
The play of light on water has attracted crowds to the lakes since Victorian times. Ullswater used to boast it was a piece of Switzerland, and the steamer Raven owes its existence to that pioneer impresario of British tourism, Thomas Cook.
Well, Thomas Cook approached the company in the 1880s, early 1880s, I believe, to talk with them about bringing more and more passengers up from London by steam train. Would the company guarantee sailings against breakdowns? Would they consider building a larger boat to service that trade? The company responded positively, and that's why they ended up building Raven alongside Lady of the Lake. That's why there were two steamers on the lake at that time. That popularity has never waned. It's actually increased, and now the majority of the work that those two boats do is tourist based. It's a beautiful area. It's got its own serenity and tranquility. You only have to think back to days of yore when people like Coleridge and Wordsworth would get their artistic inspiration from this particular area, among others. And I think that's very much one of the drivers for people today as well. We don't sail in weather that's overly windy because it would be foolish, you would do damage, etc. But we have very few cancellations because of that. Mostly we get out there in the winter when you get those lovely crystal clear days or those bright breezy days when there's white tops, and I think it just gives another aspect and lets you see another element that's available in an environment such as this. The lake's mood can change on a daily basis. It's very, very rarely you're going to have the same personality on any 2 days.
Twisting and tumbling down, the waterfall reveals all the sparkling, hidden colours of the light. No wonder William Wordsworth came here to sit and watch, enchanted. In 1955, Donald Campbell chose the 7-mile stretch of Ullswater for his attempt on the world water speed record. His jet-powered Bluebird took the prize at just over 202 miles an hour. Today, no jets or speedboats brutalise this tranquility. 10 miles an hour is the limit. At every turn, the Lake District sets out another artist's view. Ashness Bridge was built centuries ago for pack horses, the only way to haul goods through these rugged hills. Many say the most picturesque of the lakes is Derwentwater, studded with 4 islands, the largest of them Derwent Isle, home of the remarkable Joseph Pocklington, who bought it in 1778.
Joseph Pocklington came here from Yorkshire, from a very wealthy family. He didn't need to seem to work, and he just built 4 rather interesting houses in the area. But the one on the island here is especially interesting, and he liked to decorate his landscape with all sorts of oddities and bizarre bits and pieces. You can still see his Gothic boathouse down there by the shore, and scattered around he had other relics like a little miniature stone circle, and he loved to have cannon and that sort of thing.
Joseph Pocklington built himself a fort and a gun battery, and entertained by staging mock naval battles and boisterous regattas. Of course, the cannon no longer roar and scatter the birds, and since Pocklington's time, Derwent Isle has been rather quieter.
The other island is my favourite one, actually, and that island is called St Herbert's Island. Now, St Herbert was a hermit, a recluse, who lived on the island in the 7th century. He was a very good friend of St Cuthbert, who was Bishop of Lindisfarne. And the story goes that they used to get together once a year for periods of meditation, mutual support and inspiration. And they were such good friends that they had an agreement that when one died, the other would die very soon afterwards. And so it came to pass, we are told, or so the story tells us, that in fact, when one died, the other did die on the same day, in the same hour and the same minute. How anyone could actually prove that, I'm not sure, but it's a great story, isn't it?
Joseph Pocklington, by the way, wanted his own hermit as a tourist attraction, but no one would take the job. Derwentwater is 3 miles long with a waist measurement of 1.5 miles, and some boats strike just the right note of elegance, like this stylish launch.
The landscape around Derwentwater is absolutely magnificent. It has marvellous fells on all sides and some superb walks that one can take. And of course you can go out on the water itself, take a rowing boat out onto the lake, take a canoe or take the launch. At the far end of the lake there is a famous spot called Lodore Falls, magnificent high waterfalls, especially in winter when it's been raining a lot. And these are immortalised by a number of poets. and were a great place for early tourists to visit because they loved the power of water and the wildness of the scene. So this area has been for many centuries now a place where tourists have loved to come to experience the wildness and often the wetness of the scene, we have to say.
Dreamy waters and waterfalls tempt us to linger. But now we leave the magical Lake District for the different grandeur of the Yorkshire Dales. Straddling the Pennine Hills and parts of North Yorkshire and Cumbria, the Yorkshire Dales National Park spreads for 680 square miles. A bracing landscape of high hills, moors and mountain streams. The waters of the River Ure hurry over the Aysgarth Falls in Wensleydale. Framed by overhanging bushes and trees, thrilling cascades leap over 3 broad ledges. Along the half-mile falls, the reckless river rolls towards the valley of the Ouse and the sea. It's one of the cleanest, purest rivers in the country. A few miles on, at the head of Wensleydale, the Hardraw Force surges dramatically over a limestone cliff. It drops 100 feet, the longest fall of water in England, and it takes its name from the old northern word for a waterfall, a force. And after heavy rain, it's formidable. On our journey towards York, we enjoy the typical refreshing landscape of the Dales. That striking upland green, stone houses beneath the fells, distinctive dry stone walls, and everywhere views of steep hills and wooded vales. We stop for a while in Knaresborough, delightful ornament of the West Riding, an old weaving town, jumbled tiers of houses perching comfortably on the riverside. The unruffled River Nid suggests a jaunt in a rowing boat, and on its strategic bluff the 14th century castle, battered by the Scots and again by the Roundheads, tells of a town with abundant history under its belt. Near Knaresborough rise cliffs pitted with caves. One of them said to have been the home of Mother Shipton, who supposedly could see into the future, but was perhaps a woman who never was, just a figure in a folk tale. And here's a strange, tiny chapel, founded in medieval times. The figure of a swordsman guards the door. For centuries, people have been drawn to what's called the dropping well, an odd local phenomenon, a spring whose high limestone content petrifies objects that fall into it. After Knaresborough, we reach York and all its marvels. A maze of medieval lanes, postcard houses bent by time, strips of sky through the rooftops, a charming human scale, competing shop signs, a city with roots 20 centuries old, and once the target of Viking raiders.
Back in Viking times, 1,000 years ago, this river looked nothing like it does today. It would have been 2 or 3 times as wide. It would have been tidal, and that would have suited the Viking Age ships that would have come up here. Because you've got to think of York as an inland port. Although it's 50 miles or so from the coast, up the river Ouse, down into the Humber, takes you right out into the North Sea, and then the world is literally your oyster. So for Vikings coming from Scandinavia with links back to the homeland, bringing their ships up here as invaders was fine. And then when they settled in York, late in the 9th century, they developed a great trading network. And once again, ships and the river were the key to their success. We had particularly strong links with Ireland, with Dublin, which was also an important riverine port. And indeed here in York, we've still got a place named Divlin Staines, Dublin Stones, the place where the ships from Dublin would have tied up. We also had links going to the continent, to what is now Germany, and further afield as well, ultimately as far as the Near East and beyond. And although boats from there, of course, weren't coming up the river, the goods that were traded through middlemen did make their ways right into York, so we find exotic things in our excavations like silks from Byzantium, cowrie shell from the Red Sea, even Arab coins from what is today Samarkand. So this vast network that York was plugged into ultimately depended for its lifeline on the river.
So the enterprising Vikings laboured hard to make York a trading city of the known world. And as they worked, they also played.
The only leisure time spent on the river for which we've got archaeological evidence, believe it or not, is ice skating. Because to our surprise, in our Viking dig excavations, we found literally hundreds of things that eventually we worked out were ice skates. They were the foot bones of cattle and horses, which people had strapped onto the underside of their shoes and had gone skating on the river. And of course that reminds us that back in the Viking Age the climate was very slightly different from today's, and in the winter the river would actually freeze. And indeed as recently as the Victorian period there are stories about people walking on the ice across the river in the winter, something of course you wouldn't do today.
But there are no thoughts of skates and winter ice in summer, when you stroll the dappled riverside beneath canopies of trees. The 12th century city walls are a fascinating balcony for views of York's medieval townscape. The Minster rises in glory, the largest medieval church in Northern Europe, built from 1230 to 1475. Its stained glass magnificent, carvings exquisite, all of it soaring and inspiring. Along the River Ouse, the bridges compete in beauty. The Lendal Bridge is a handsome example of a Victorian iron span. And so too is the Skeldergate Bridge, both of them bridges built to last. Now we leave York on our way to another river and a city of legendary bridges.
As we come into the northeast of England, heading for the River Tyne, there's a sense of frontier country. The Angel of the North draws on the drama of the landscape and in turn gives it its own compelling mystery. Now we're on the Tyne, the big river, big in the imagination of its people. See how the jostling bridges span centuries of shipbuilding, coal, engineering, a world largely gone now, but this marvellous new Millennium Bridge says firmly and gracefully, we don't look back, we look forward. From the Newcastle side of the river, we get this dramatic sense of place. The Tyne and its brotherhood of bridges. Heart of the Geordie nation.
As soon as I can, I go afloat for a sailor's eye view of the bridges and the places they serve. Skipper Doug Byrne tells me his Tyne tales.
Doug, all these bridges along the Tyne, they're really important to people in Newcastle and Gateshead.
Well, actually, they're the main artery between the two towns of Newcastle and Gateshead. It's always the thing that people have said, well, which was the more important, Newcastle or Gateshead? And Newcastle naturally is the bigger of the two towns, but if we didn't have the bridges, we'd be totally cut off. That's including rail links, pedestrianisation, the roadways, everything is linked on these 7 bridges. Now, originally, the old Redtube Bridge was a toll bridge. Now, the new Redtube Bridge came along, and this was supposed to take the excess of the traffic away from Newcastle. One problem: too high, too exposed, and when we get a gale of wind, it's shut. And the wind down this neck of the woods is pretty strong. And to be quite honest, come the autumn and the spring equinoxes, when we get a lot of wind, the bridge is closed more times than it's open.
So it's low down in the popularity stakes?
Way down in the popularity stakes.
Well, that's number 1 bridge on our journey. What's next?
Well, this is the last, or what people like to say is the last of the big engineering bridges on the railways. This is the King Edward Bridge. It was actually opened to make the complete loop from the north to the south. Because at one time, the east-west trains used to have to cross the river up at Bladen.
And when was it opened, Doug?
1906, this one. So this is a specially built railway bridge.
Now the next one is a picture in blue.
This is another nice bridge. This is the Queen Elizabeth II Metro Bridge. Now this bridge takes our Tyneside rapid transit system, originally opened by the Queen Elizabeth, and the metro lines run from the airport to the coast and from the town to South Shields. In the night time, this bridge it's a work of art because there are blue lights that reflect off the river, and what they actually do is, as the tide rate goes up or goes down, the lights change in different colours, and they raise up and go down with the tide. It's a really nice bridge though. I like the Metro Bridge.
So people are really fond of their bridges?
They are, apart from the Redtube Bridge, but I think if you're a Geordie, your main bridges are the ones that are coming up there. I think it's because that's epitomises Tyneside. You've got the Tyne Bridge, you've got the Swing Bridge, and the High Level Bridge. They were the first 3 bridges here. The High Level Bridge, which is this first one, is in fact the oldest bridge on the river. It was built by Robert Stevenson, and he was given the go-ahead to just design a bridge, and he came up with this wonderful structure.
The high-level bridge opened in 1849 and 5 years later gave a grandstand view of the Great Fire of Newcastle, which killed about 70 people. Like all high bridges, it attracted exhibitionist jumpers. In 1865, while the police were busy stopping one man leaping, another jumped into the river and then passed his hat around the crowd.
And now hooray for the Swing Bridge.
Ah, well, this is my favourite bridge. This bridge, actually the first bridge here was put here by the Romans and built when Hadrian came here, and they built the wall at Wall's End, which actually ended here at Newcastle. but they decided that the way the structure was, they would take the wall down to Wallsend and build a bridge across here. It was actually called Pons Alias, Alias being Hadrian's family name.
And does it still swing regularly?
Yes, well, if you've got the money to pay for it, yes, it costs about £250 to get it to swing. But they do open it now and again on special occasions. This is the icon of Tyneside. This is the Tyne Bridge. Everybody says, right, was Sydney Harbour Bridge built first or was the Tyne Bridge built first? Well, in actual truth, Sydney Harbour Bridge was started first 9 months ahead of the Tyne Bridge. But because the Tyne Bridge was smaller, it was actually finished 3 years before the Sydney Harbour Bridge.
I mean, whenever Newcastle celebrates, this is where all the fireworks are and the lights.
They are. Now, the old girl is 80 years old this month. And she's still going strong. I want to be around when she's 100, I'll tell you that, because there will be big celebrations then.
But this says something, doesn't it, the Millennium Bridge, about the new mood in Newcastle and Gateshead?
Yeah, all the other bridges that we've passed under, what you could call proper bridges, the bridges. This is a pedestrian bridge. It doesn't take any traffic at all. It's solely for the people of Tyneside. So you can go from the Gateshead side, where all the restaurants are, have a little walk over, do a circuitous route over the swing bridge. Of course, we've got the Hilton Hotel, you've got the Sage, the music centre here, and the Baltic. That's for contemporary art. This bridge was put here for leisure activities of Tyneside. It's a beautiful bridge. In fact, I think if you can hang around at noon every day, it's worth just coming down to the quayside to watch the bridge tilt. It's our bridge, it's what we call the Blinking Eye Bridge.
And all the other bridges, they wear working overalls. This one wears a party dress.
It is, it's a party bridge. It's solely for just pedestrians.
How long have you worked on the river?
Well, I've been connected with the river all my life. My dad was a pilot here, all my relatives were pilots on the river. Unfortunately, when I got to the crazy age of 18 years old, I thought, I don't want to be a pilot and be on the river all the time. I wanted to go to sea, so I came up, and after I'd been to the Marine College in South Shields, and I was cheeky enough to knock on the door of a shipping company at Newcastle, RS Dalglish, and I thought, I want to go to sea and I want to go on one of those ships. And I got a job as a cadet. Spent my time on 2 ships. It sounds like a prison sentence, you run and spend your time. Well, it was. I was 18 months on the Silks with and 2 years on the Warkworth. I got my time in anyway. But I enjoyed it, and I mean, I think one of the finest things ever was when I was on the Warkworth. We came into the Tyne to Spillers, just around the corner, with grain from Canada. And I don't know, there's just something about coming into the River Tyne and seeing it after you've been away for a while. It's a special river. Bear in mind, I've been all over the world, you know. There's just nothing finer than coming up to Newcastle on a ship, into the harbour, up the river, and seeing the bridges as well. It's nostalgia, you know. I think Geordies are just full of it. It's our river, and it's what we love. It's in your blood. I think Bobby Robson summed it up when he said one day, he said, if you cut me, I'd bleed black and white. Well, I think all Geordies say that. I mean, it's not so much for the football team, but you bleed the River Tyne. You know, it's a wonderful, wonderful river. I think everybody has it. It's instilled in them from the day you're born, and you're proud to be a Geordie. And I am. I certainly am proud to be a Geordie.
Tall and still, like herons on the riverbank, cranes evoke the old masculine working-class world of Tyneside shipbuilding.
We were always contesting with the Clyde and possibly the Mersey, Belfast, as a major shipbuilding river. But the Tyne had its loyal customers, companies who came here year after year. There was a famous shipping company down in St Ives in Cornwall, the Hayne Shipbuilding, and they had 87 ships built over the years at one shipyard in South Shields, proving the loyalty of firms that came back to this river, knowing that we were very satisfied over the preceding many years with the ships that had been delivered to them. When I first came back to the Tyne 20 odd years ago, the two things that I that struck me particularly were the lack of smoking chimneys and the sound of shipyard buzzers no longer existed. Every shipyard time office, their clock would be slightly out with the yard across the river, so it has been described as a cascade of buzzers. And of course, local housewives set their times automatically by the sound of the shipyard buzzer. 12 o'clock, the boys are due in 10 minutes time, let's get the table laid, etc.
Like the shipyard buzzers, the clanging hammers have also gone. But there are still ships, cruise ships too. Tyneside endures with a strong sense of itself. Daybreak on the Northumberland coast. At North Shields, at the mouth of the Tyne, fishermen repair their nets. For centuries, North Shields has earned its living from the sea. On the fish quay, the regular 7:30 morning auction. The vital link between the 30 boats operating from the port and their customers.
35. Lovely bit of honey there, 20.
The ideas I thought was in a book. What with the picture?
From here on the Tyne, the fish go all over Britain. As always, getting fish from the sea to the table is a hard and fiercely competitive business. But hard work, after all, is a Tyne tradition. And here come the Vikings. Shields is a Viking word. And just as they did 1,000 years ago, the Vikings crossed the sea to the mighty Tyne.
The main thing about this river is it's a river right from the very start. It's not a meandering estuary gradually tapering in. Once you come in through those piers, you've left the North Sea behind and you're in the River Tyne straight away. And there's nothing to beat the feeling that I've had 3 occasions in the 30 years I was at sea to actually come in my own home river. There's that feeling coming in, you think, well, this is it, this is the place. Though I lived away for a while, there was never anything quite like the feelings you got coming into your own home territory. Tynesiders from all over the world come back and they come down to their favourite little spots and they come back to see the changes. They come back to see the modern developments up at the quayside, the Sage, the Baltic, Millennium Bridge. But there's also a great attachment to these little places.